Welcome, everybody, back to another BOLDcast One Piece podcast discussion. This time, due to popular demand, we're breaking the streak of doing one per saga because I think the saga is like extra long or something, and some crazy stuff probably happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's just a lot.
And there's
to
already
talk
been
about.
a lot going on so far. Well, here we are talking about Amazon Lily and the Sabaody, however you properly say it, archipelago.
Mm-hmm.
And we have collected questions from our patrons.
Mm-hmm. And we would like to express deep gratitude for everyone being good and not spoiling us and, asking stuff about things that haven't happened yet. It is very much appreciated that we, that everyone just listened to what we said. So we appreciate that. And I will get some questions.
All right.
Okay, this is the first question from Copernicus, who asked, now that you've seen Hachi's impact on the impact of Sabaody, I don't know how to say it, what do you think of the decision to strike him from the live action? Does it indicate that the live action will likely never get that far, or that they will take a different direction in this arc with his absence?
I mean, clearly the live action's not going to get that far.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's clearly they're not going to get that far. I don't know what world people are living in that the live action, that they think, like, it, we one season in, that was last year, and we haven't even left the East Blue yet.
Yeah, that's true.
People age, so, if it's going to take 10 years, Luffy's going to be a fucking dad by the time that,
Luffy's going to be geriatric by the time
by the time we get to the end, he's going to be an old fucking man. Like, it just, it's not feasible, so I mean, we're already seeing that with the voice actors in there's Frankie's voice actor apparently retired.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they're all, some of them are getting pretty old, pretty up there. But yeah, I like Hachi. I liked Hachi a lot even in East Blue, but yeah, it's clearly they're not gonna get that far. And I think that it's not like they didn't know that Hachi was going to play a role later.
Yeah,
they just knew that I think the scope of the series was not so large.
Boardback asked, who is your favorite supernova aside from Luffy and Zoro? There's a lot of questions about the supernovas in general, just kind of like, what did we think about them? Who's the coolest? Who do you want to see again? I think like at first when they all got introduced, it was just like, wow, this is like a lot of people, and I didn't know whether I'd really care about them or not, but I think that they made a big enough impact that I'm interested in most of them, and they all had kind of cool abilities as well. Some the guy who had like all the mini people inside of them, I'm like, I don't really care about him as a person, but that ability was kind of cool,
Mm-hmm.
And then some, like the girl who can like seemingly like turn people into kids and is just like constantly eating, is really cool. And she seems like the kind of person that we might see more of later, but we just didn't get a lot of her right now.
I think most of them seem that way. The one that seemed like the least like that I was still interested in was like Drake and the dude with the voodoo dolls, whatever his thing was.
Yeah.
They seem less like big main, rival type guys. Obviously not on the level of Law and Kid, but
they were the kind of the
I was
main
interested in
ones.
all of them. I thought they were all great. I think they were all introduced really cool. It was really hype when they were getting introduced.
Yeah, the guy that's like all musical instrumentish was also just like super strange.
Yeah,
as well.
His introduction, like the animation when we first saw him, was really cool because they accentuated like his really long double elbowed arms, and just his whole look and everything. Like, and that makes it's such a hard thing. Like, the animation really elevated a lot of those big moments in the big parts of this arc. Like, there were some parts that were kind of dragged out, as they always are. But, throughout the whole arc, what really sold everything to me was just the presentation of it. It really felt like they wanted to present things properly. and they really did. And I think that went a long way too, on top of just the fact that all of them are really interesting on their own. But everybody, you know, I think I've made it clear by this point in our journey that like the presentation really matters to me a lot. You know, I don't want to watch the show just for it to be a moving manga. So I really appreciated just the spectacle of all of their introductions and I mean, I'm sure it was probably communicated in the paneling and the whole vibe of their introduction in the manga, but like the way that it was cutting around, the way that the music was used, you know, sometimes in long running shonen, they have like a certain batch of music that they can use, but whenever it's used in an interesting way, editing wise, like I just loved all of it. I really liked all of it. And as far as just crews and like smaller characters, not just the Supernovas, but their crews, Captain Kidd's crew is like so freaking badass. Like all the side guys, and like, yeah, there's so many like first mates or like, you know, not the main captain, but their crew. And they got Beppo over there jumping around. Like it just so much personality throughout through the whole cast.
Throughout a lot. Well, and maybe that's not really fair, but like I feel like sometimes when we meet other crews, it's like there's the captain who's a distinct person, and then there's like one or two like main other guys, and then the rest are just like cardboard cutouts essentially. So I feel like this, and like just the fact that there's so many introduced at once, he must have just been so inspired to just keep making new cool designs and cool people, because it felt like not only was there like the captains and then they're like one distinct guy on their crew, like some of them had like multiple, like an entire crew full of unique people similar to the Straw Hats. And not all of them did, you know, like there was a lot of like the voodoo doll guy, a lot of his crew.
I'm not 100% certain that the people were getting blown up were like the random pirates or whatever.
No, but I think it was like, oh no, he's gonna get got. Like there was a few of his guys that I think were his guys that they weren't getting.
Well, yeah, they were all like priestly or like religious looking, kind of similar looking people. Yeah, it was very good.
I think it was well done. I think it could have. Yeah, I just like the creativity, and you know, everyone.
Somebody said in the comments that Oda had to like turn in those guys on like short notice. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I saw that as well. That it was like he kind of wanted it to be a bit more hype and thought them all up at the last minute.
Yeah, which I it's cool to see him. It's very interesting. Those are the real like flashes of inspiration that you see when you want to achieve a goal, but he kind of. There's not a lot of time for it to go through like the machine. I don't know. I don't even know if this is true, but this is true in other parts of, you know, this series and others where like the author's kind of just throws it in there and it's like relying on instinct, and it happens to be like a flash in the pan moment, and it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. The next question is from Yosama, who asked, how does the emergence of the racism plotline and everything revealed about the Fishmen so far reshape your perspective on the Arlong Park arc, both in the anime and live action adaptations?
Well, I think that it's kind of that question doesn't really apply to us as much because of how highlighted that aspect was in the live action compared to the anime. If you just read the manga or the anime, it maybe was there in the background, but it clearly developed definitely before Water 7, because I think that like that's one thing that recolored. I think all the stuff about the Fishmen and Fishman Island recolors Arlong because of our experience with Arlong. But by the time we got to Tom and Kokoro, I wasn't thinking about the whole like Fishman racism the same way. I probably should have, because he was like on trial, you know, kind of for no reason other than for being associated with Roger like a long time ago. So like, you know, he's being discriminated against in a way also because of what Roger represents. But anyway, I think that, yeah, it doesn't really change anything with Arlong in particular because the live action really colored that well. But with Tom and Kokoro, somebody like, I didn't think about it even at all until like somebody was pointing it out when I forget if it was Kami or if it was Babagu or Hachi or whoever was talking about the Fishman racism. But yeah, like they showed the ranking of all the different like people, all the different types of like the pricing generally for each type of fishman or different slave, and mermaids were like at the top, and Kokoro was only half fishman or half mermaid, but she still had like basically the best of both worlds. So she could walk on land with legs. But yeah, I don't know. It just, I didn't think about it. And, but it's, I guess if the question, what I think about it is I think it's really interesting. And I think it's interesting because it doesn't feel like, it feels like all that was actually, you know, there in his mind before. It feels like that's probably why Kokoro was hiding. And like with foreshadowing that Kokoro was a mermaid, how she like wasn't threatened by Aqualagna at all. You know, she was totally chill. And like, why is she just standing on these buildings when like everybody's running away and gonna die? Well, it's because she's later revealed to be a mermaid, and it felt in the moment like it was just really
like she's
crazy
just a drunk
and like
old
she's
lady
insane.
and doesn't care.
Yeah, it feels in the moment like, oh, she's here to be dramatic, like standing on these buildings with the big like horizon, and Luffy's like out there somewhere. But then it's later like, yeah, okay, oh, so it must have been planned because like it was dramatic, but like it doesn't make any sense otherwise unless she's a fish. What it kind of feels like that. It's like all the stuff with Tom and Kokoro. It feels it's one of those things that doesn't feel like it's just, oh, like I don't know how to explain this. I've explained this a million ways before. We've talked about, this is the kind of thing we talk about a lot, but like it doesn't feel like we got to this time where Oda was like, okay, slavery. We're talking about slavery. We're doing things with slavery. What can we tie in with what's some like loose threads with some stuff with characters before? We got Fishmen, we got slavery. What's some Fishmen? Okay, we got Arlong, we got this, we got that. It didn't feel like he had this like, okay, what loose threads can I tie to this? Okay, Arlong and Tom and Kokoro. Yeah, we could tie them to this. And then it makes sense with the way that I'm going to present all this new stuff that you can think about the old stuff this way. It feels like he was like, okay, Fishman, when he's making Tom or making Kokoro, like, you know, that kind of process. And there's some, it feels a lot more like a world rather than the next arc in a story. And I like, everybody always talks about what world building in One Piece like it's a crazy, incredible thing. And I think it's just a lot of it is I'm skeptical of, and I have been skeptical of it before and during us watching the show, like whether or not it's actually good world building. Because actually good world building just boils down to a series of narrative necessities for the sake of a story to progress. So then everything that's like, oh, this cool tribe of people, it's like, okay, that cool tribe of people is there to achieve these goals for the story, say this about the main character and their journey, etc. And then it feels like if you look at it that way, it's less of a world and more, again, just like this linear thing. And when we're in the grand line and it's literally a linear trajectory, you know, in an adventure story, I'm going off on a long tangent, but all I'm saying is it doesn't feel as linear as I was expecting it to and as I was worried about it, with all of these things kind of making it seem like, okay, is this actually big world building and like it really interesting, expansive, everything's alive whether we're there or not, or is it, you know, thinking of things that would be cool the next step, and like what kind of cool thing could I put in front of the audience, how can I wow them, this game of this like kind of pick me mentality of world building. It feels less and less like that, and that's why connecting it to Tom and to Arlong matters so much, because it feels less like I want dark slavery, human trafficking, all these things, and explore all these things as like my next sort of motif in the story. You know, it's not just something that he wants to explore. It's something that has been set up properly, and it makes a big difference. It really does. That's what makes the world feel alive. It makes it feel like all of the stuff that their characters were going through, Tom and Arlong and Hachi and all those people, like they were actually going through things and not, you know, retroactively because we want them to be relevant now to make this thing seem bigger, you know? Like, I don't know. I hope that makes sense. It's just, it's satisfying because sometimes things do feel like they're just kind of thrown out there to make the current drama more interesting and not like in a actually living, breathing way. So I like it. I think that it's good. It's surprising how connected everything is, and it feels really satisfying to go through. It feels a lot more satisfying than if it was just human trafficking and there wasn't all the stuff with the Fishmen. It feels like now there's like a genuine history to all of this stuff that is genuinely connected with like the world government and all this stuff. Like, it feels good. It's great.
I think also, I think in the moment when we watched the Arlong arc after seeing the live action, and because we saw the live action, they obviously brought in these themes earlier and made it a little bit more obvious that, there was prejudices against Fishmen, and, then that's what was kind of motivating Arlong and his group. And I liked that at the time because they felt a little bit... like it just made them feel more realistic and a little bit more that even he was still a bad guy, but it gave him a reason for doing what he was doing, a strong motivation. And I think that made him a lot more interesting than when we see him in the anime. And like he's still a good villain, and it was still a fantastic arc, but it was just, missing some of that dimension. A lot of early One Piece was very like, there's a big bad guy and he's coming to town and he's, wrecking stuff. But I think that, now having, and obviously like we were talking about earlier with Hachi, I don't think that the live action is anticipating to get to this point where this becomes a thing. So, adding it in earlier on makes sense in that case. But I kind of like, now that it's been revealed, I like the way that it was done, because it's not just a reveal for us, it's a reveal for the characters in the story, and it makes them see all of that in a different light. It makes them sort of reflect, Nami has to, not necessarily forgive Hachi, but like, she gains more understanding of him and is able to see him as, he was doing bad things, but that doesn't mean he's a terrible person. He obviously, has, people that he cares about and is, willing to do anything to save them. And he's, there's just more going on. And I like that. Yeah, it doesn't just feel like the reveal of, the Arlong pirates, experiencing all these things and, all of the sun tattoos and this and that. Like, the reveal of that feels like it's for the characters, because a lot of them don't know a lot about the world government. Like Luffy doesn't know fucking anything about the world government. None of them know, a lot of these big things, other than Robin, who, has more of a world perspective.
The only person, like, as far as the crew, who might know more about the world government than the audience is Robin. But yeah, like, so we know more than most of them. They aren't really thinking about that, right? Is what you're saying.
Yeah, and yeah. I guess I just like the way that it kind of built up in the, like you were saying, how it sort of gradually expanded in the story, and I like that a lot. And yeah, it doesn't feel like it was just added, and it feels like it was sort of expanded upon, and as the Straw Hats' view of the world is changing, our view is changing as well, and things are getting crazier and darker, and there's so many more like conspiracies and what's the word, like bad things going on behind the scenes, and not even behind the scenes, in broad daylight.
Speaking of the brand and the tattoo stuff, or I guess it's not tattoos, brand, but one thing that really, I looked back on it in my own time. Nobody really mentioned this, but so it's not from a comment. It's something that I wanted to look at myself, because I was like, Nami changing her tattoo. It felt really weird, because it's like she didn't black out her tattoo. She just like changed it. She got it removed somehow. I guess they can do that. Anyway,
skinned herself.
Well, yeah, but she did it. She did change it, and they tattooed her, right? Mm-hmm. But it's clear her tattoo is like a different color, and it's also a different, like, so it's not, it being a different color is important, because if it was the same color, because it's a different pattern that her thing was than Arlong and all those guys. So this is evidence that it was at least conceived. Whether it was going to be this far into the story, it was probably not, because the story was much smaller in scope, because it was still like, how popular is this going to be? Is this going to be something that's run for 100 chapters, 200, 500, whatever? But it's important. The color is important, and I know it's a black and white, but if it was the same color, then it could have just been that all of the Arlong guys could have had tattoos as well, and not brands, and that would change in the past how much Oda was planning for all of them to be branded and then have the brand overtaken by another brand as like a symbol of freedom or whatever. Like all of that aspect, all this storied stuff that was layered on top of this one symbol that was just a symbol early on. It could, if it was a tattoo, all of that stuff would be it might be similar. Maybe he had a similar conception, but it would be different than what we think of it now based on knowing all the information. So Nami as a tattoo, they clearly have. Maybe it's a different color tattoo, but it's different than her thing.
Yeah, and hers
was
different.
Arlong's like
it was like a sword
pirate, his pirate symbol, right? So that's important too, because then it's not there. Like that's a clear thing. It's like he branded her like in a cattle kind of sense, like as a slave or as a member of his crew, as somebody that's under his command, differently than all of the other fishmen who had this other colored marking on them. So she got a tattoo and it was of a different thing. So she didn't get the sun because that's not his symbol that he puts on. Like that's not his
a
critical
to, like, give away.
Like as far as this whole like did Oda plan this? Was Oda thinking of this? We still don't know. There's still room, maybe he only gives those to his slaves and all of his crew members, his real crew members, get the sun or something. As far as the previous continuity, like Oda being a young, like early stage manga author of this story that is currently only in the East Blue, like nothing but all the islands in the Grand Line, how everything grew, getting in the head of that person, like there's still room for it to not have been planned to this degree. But if you think about all the details, because, and it's this, I think this is why, like for a while, I wasn't talking about things in this kind of frame of mind, because we talked about it a lot, especially in Skype, and it kind of exhausted us because it felt like every time that we like applied a kind of like trying to figure out the authorial intent and trying to figure out all this stuff, it usually led to us thinking ourselves out of the story and getting disappointed. But this is why I do it. This is why we talk about it this way, is because eventually you get to the point where talking about things this way actually helps the enjoyment. Because when we look at all the stuff with Nami's tattoo, it kind of leans less into, like the likelihood that Oda is like a savant kind of like freestyling on a keyboard this like beautiful jazz melody or something like that, like this crazy artist who's just like can improvise notes and chords like and string everything together and make it this beautiful piece that's like a symphony or something. Like it's less making it work, and it's like when you look at things in this detail and try and get in his head, normally it's like, okay, is it like, is it improvised? Is it just making it work? And like, oh, that really worked out interestingly that he like threw these things together in this way. But then you look at it at this detail and it's clear that most of this was probably set up that early. So it's just great to see that we can look at things like we've been looking at them and it doesn't detract from the experience that a lot of other people have. It actually proves what they're saying. And I think things like this are what people who are further in the series probably remember, is once it gets to this point and things are really getting tied together and really coming to fruition, people look at us, in Alabasta and we're complaining that whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, they don't even understand the series is like clearly setting up all this shit and they don't see it because they don't have the context. Well, now we're starting to get the context. And we're starting to get rewarded for thinking of things properly rather than, dissuaded from it because it's like you guys should just be feeling the story as it goes and not thinking too hard about it, So it's good to get rewarded with that, and that kind of like perspective that we bring to other things like Hunter x Hunter, where it felt like you'd always get rewarded for like thinking of things like that. One Piece is kind of starting to go more in that direction. And again, that doesn't mean that everything before was bad and now it's starting to get good. It's just that we're starting to see more of this type of thing, I guess. I don't know. It's good. Any other questions, or do you have anything more to say?
Yeah, I have a bunch more questions. Crikey asked, after leaving Thriller Bark, which is one of the more lighthearted arcs with relatively low stakes, you are thrown into a visually beautiful yet dystopian island full of heavy-hitting pirates and marines. Were you surprised that the tone shift was so drastic, and did you enjoy the tone shift? Do you enjoy enjoy more lore heavy and world building arcs or less serious ones, and why?
What do you think?
I think that it is really interesting because, you know, we have Thriller Bark, which was one of my favorites for the, you know, the whole vibe and just the way that it was presented, especially early on. And then, yeah, at the end of Thriller Bark, it gets super serious. You know, like Kuma shows up, destroys everyone. It's insane. And then we go on to this one where then we see a mermaid and she's kind of ditzy and she's getting kidnapped all over the place. And we have the reveal of Duval, who looks like you know, Sanji's bad illustrated mugshot. And it's ridiculous, and it does have a lot of a lighter tone to it, even just visually, like color choice wise, because Thriller Bark was all these, you know, dark purples and blues, to then come up where, like, back in the open ocean, it's very tropical, very like light blues, light greens kind of vibes. Kami has a, like, you know, neon pink and yellow shirt. Papagu's all orange, you know, like it's a different vibe for sure. And then we go to the archipelago and it's like, wow, this place is so beautiful. And then things start to get like, oh, this is messed up, you know, like it's like, it's not like Thriller Bark where it's like, okay, this place looks like an evil haunted mansion, and it is an evil haunted mansion. It's like, this place looks like a beautiful oasis, and it's a terrible place unless you're a celestial dragon, essentially, you know? And I kind of like that switch up, and yeah, a bit of a tone shift, a bit of a, you know, just visual type of shift. I like it a lot, and I think it was effective.
I agree. Yeah, as far as like I agree. It's I mean that's sort of like what that switch up of, oh, Thriller Bark looks really dark and scary and like serious, and then it's ridiculous. Like even the strongest like people there are like, their powers are like wacky, you know.
Yeah.
Still powerful, but like, you know, they're not shooting laser beams and like, you know, doing Kamehameha blasts and light speed kicks and stuff like that. So yeah, the switch up, that's like the nature of kind of world building, or at the very least comedy, which is a big part of One Piece, obviously, is the setting up the expectations and then switching them. But as far as the end of the question of, you know, do you prefer the lore focused, like overarching plot, or the moment to moment comedy? I think that I obviously prefer the lore, but it's because the comedy is a mixed bag. You know, not every joke is going to land over the course of 1,000 chapters. That's obvious, and I don't think anybody's to blame for that, no matter what kind of viewer you are. Like, not every joke, and it's also there's a culture barrier where Japanese comedy is obviously very different than Canadian or North American or Western comedy in general, because the language difference. I talk about it a lot. It's like if you change the sentence structure, just all, you know, English comedy just doesn't work in the sentence structure and the format of Japanese comedy. That's why like Japanese comedy is all about being really fast and talking fast and getting through things quickly, because that setup punchline thing doesn't work when you need to put the words for the punchline in the subject like first. You know, the way the sentences are structured, it makes Japanese comedy, or in the way that we do it in English, very difficult. That's beside the point. But the point is, comedy isn't going to land for us as much as Japanese viewers in general, because we're not speaking Japanese. But aside from that, as like a given, the comedy, like in One Piece so far, because it's so like chapter to chapter, and everything's so chapter to chapter, at least up to this point, the comedy sometimes feels like a fallback when Oda maybe gets bored or doesn't believe in like what's happening. Like sometimes it feels like, oh, this was supposed to be really serious or really cool, and this is my interpretation, you can disagree with it, but sometimes it feels this way to me, is that sometimes it feels like things are moving in a direction and then it gets too complicated, or it just loses its effect, or he is not interested in it, or maybe an editor's like, this isn't cool, or this isn't working, or this is going to cause problems for this, or whatever happens. And then it's like, okay, actually it's just a joke. Actually, it's just stupid guy. It's just a three-headed guy who's like big boss is actually just a fucking bunch of three idiots in a trench coat together. Like it's like, okay, you were building up a big thing, and then it feels like you're not. It feels less like, oh, set up for and then punchline, where it's actually funny and not serious. Sometimes it's that. A lot of times it's that, but sometimes the comedy is like, it's like whatever. Like, so it's less. It doesn't feel as good to me anyway. Generally, I just prefer the lore stuff because you can't do that. Like, you can't fall back if you keep doing that thing where you fall back on, you kind of give up on like something serious or a serious part of your world. It's gonna really fuck with you later. So I don't think he does it as nearly as much. Where he's like, take that thing that I said about comedy and apply it to like maybe a serious plot or world building moment, some with the world government or with the warlords or something. You can't just build something up and then give up on it and make it, I don't know, just rule of cool for no reason. Usually things like that are built up beforehand, and he's a lot more strict with when it comes to the overarching plot, and when things get really serious, he's a lot more strict about it. And sometimes he'll play it over the top, and it still can be funny or a joke or whatever. But I think that's the reason, is that it's the overarching plot stuff and the serious bits are less of a mixed bag as a Western viewer because of the language thing that I talked about, but also just because you can't abandon that in the same way that you can abandon like things on a smaller scale, So like when it's that larger scale, it's usually a lot more thought out. I just like it a lot more, and the thing is, you can't just like One Piece for that, because One Piece most of the time, probably 70 or 80% of the time, isn't about all that shit. It's usually about the comedy and having fun, which is what I prepared myself for. I wasn't preparing myself for another Hunter x Hunter, of which, has a balance in its own right, but it's a little bit more balanced. I knew that One Piece was going to be closer to something like JoJo, so I prepared myself for that, and I feel like that's paid off a lot in the long run. I probably wouldn't even like One Piece if I didn't like set my expectations properly for the series, which is a lot more moment-to-moment comedy, a lot less serious stuff most of the time. And now that's paying off, where we're getting a lot more into that crazier shit
I also
these days.
think that lately in One Piece there has been a really good balance of comedy to serious. And we talked about this before in Thriller Bark. We talked about this before in Enies Lobby. And I really like when there's like jokes that then things turn serious. Like, when it's like something is really funny and then it turns really cool, or something's really funny and then it turns really serious. And then I also think that lately we've had some really good examples of things that are serious that then turn really funny and kind of become a joke. Like when we met Rayleigh and he was talking about, Roger and stuff. And then it's like, oh, can you just tell us where the One Piece is? Or like, can you just tell us like this? And then Luffy's like, what the fuck, Usopp? And it's like,
I don't think that was really fun. I think it was just funny to us, but like, I don't even know if that was mostly a joke. I think it was mostly it kind of was.
It was serious.
But it was mostly like showing Luffy being more interested in the chase and living and being a pirate than just winning, just being given the win kind of thing.
Yeah,
but it was funny to us. But
like, I guess I thought of it as like, I'm not saying it wasn't funny. It's a good character moment, but it's also funny.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's not just a joke. It shows the character, and it is funny, and the way that it's presented is in a funny way. And yeah, I like that, and I liked some of the moments, like when Brooke and Chopper were like relaxing.
Yeah, they're being a little bit too cool under pressure.
Yeah. And they're like, there's nothing we can do. We just have to wait until they arrive. Let's just relax. And then they're like totally just like, and it's like, what are you doing?
I wonder if that's like that.
Like, that was so funny.
That was good. I wonder if that was like a joke that maybe, I don't know, like a producer or somebody in his real life probably told him, like maybe he was stressing about a deadline or something like that, or like has a big source of stress and is worrying about something and he can't really do anything about it. So then they're just like the classic advice that you always hear, oh well, don't worry about things that you can't control. And then it's like, oh yeah, let me just not worry about the things I can control. Oh, my friends are dying. Oh, there's nothing I could do about it. Fuck it. Let me just drink a Mai Tai and open up a parasol and start tanning or something. It's like, it's just such a funny concept because it's relatable to when you get told that in real life of just like, don't worry about it. It's fine. You can't do anything about it anyway. It's like,
Yeah, I'll just have a
great.
vacation right now.
Yeah. You're right. Let me, you know what? I think I'm just going to catch up on my reading while this dire shit is going on just around the corner. There's no point in worrying about nuclear war. It's whatever. I won't worry about it. I'll just sit here and enjoy my time. It's like, great. Sure. Yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel, and also with the comedy, it lands a lot more when there is serious stuff. When it's all comedy, it can feel a bit tiring.
Can feel like it's like a break from and I like when it's snappy and quick. Like sometimes I feel like jokes go on for like a little bit too long, and you get fatigued of them. And that's also a personal preference. Like, you know, sometimes I really like when a joke just like is very like, you make fun of me sometimes when it's like
much,
things like Mr. Bean or like Johnny English, like that kind of thing, where it's like you can see the joke coming like 20 minutes before the joke happens.
Yeah.
But it's so like, I really like that too. But I also can really appreciate it, and especially in One Piece, I love when the jokes kind of come out of nowhere, or it is like, you know, Brooks repeating jokes or like Frankie's repeating jokes, but like it just is at a moment that is really funny, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I like both, and I like it best. I think One Piece is at its best, not just in serious moments, but in serious moments that have well placed, not like in the exact moment, but like in an episode, or like in like a section of the show where things are intense, but there are still those well placed jokes that hit at the right time to just sort of like, you know, snap you out of it. And then you can get back into it even more.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah. And then let's see. Okay, this is kind of somewhat of a similar question. Sanji Joestar asked, "What are your thoughts on the various senses of morality in the show and how it applies to the Straw Hats' views of the world? For example, we had Hachi, who redeemed himself to atone for what he did to Nami, or Duval, a human trafficker and an enemy who turned into an ally because of his usefulness." Or the Navy endorsing the system, profiting the Celestial Dragons and slave owners. Luffy entering a human shop to look for Kami and then leaving when she wasn't there. I feel like the Duval thing is kind of interesting because I feel like, I feel like that was more of like just an introduction versus then he just turned into like a funny guy.
I think it's all about the joke. I think talking about morality with something like that is a bit like, maybe it has a place in the conversation, but it's more, he's just a joke character, and he had a way to be introduced in that way. We've kind of fought with him, and then he became a part of the plot for the short term, and just because he's funny. I think that's really is it. So like getting on a soapbox about morality about Duval is just kind of like, there's not really a moral takeaway with him at all, you know?
Yeah, I think he's kind of silly. I think that there is, you know, some stuff with Hachi, like we kind of already talked about, you know, he obviously did bad stuff, but is not necessarily the worst evil villain of all time. You know, he's more complex than that. And yeah, there, you know, like we talked about throughout this arc, there's kind of this thing of like, you know, you can't just gatling the slavery and systemic oppression out of this place, you know? Yeah. Like I think that, this arc, it kind of brought in a bigger picture of just like, you know, we can't just roll in, defeat the bad guy, and then everything's saved. Yeah. You know? There's a lot bigger things going on.
Yeah, I think that One Piece in general is just about, like, morality-wise, is just about not being defined by your past actions, and just the idea that there aren't bad people. Even if they do bad things, they're not bad necessarily. It's not, you're not, just because you do, even like someone like Blackbeard, for example, I don't think in the lens of the whole story so far, I don't think we're supposed to see him as like evil. He's just like he's selfish, but that doesn't make him evil, you know? There's a lot of people that, you know, the whole story is about pirates. So like in the beginning, I think that a lot of the framing around in the East Blue is just like it's a wacky group of kids who are going around and getting themselves into trouble and then, you know, saving somebody at the end. And that's still mostly the format that One Piece follows, but it's like the idea. And then every time we had what makes them pirates isn't raping and pillaging and stealing treasure and like taking over ships and killing hundreds of people, which is what pirates are actually known for. Pirates in the beginning was they got caught up with the world government or with the Navy, and there's kind of a misunderstanding that puts them on the wrong side of the law, just barely enough, but not enough for, you know, the people at when we met or when we got Zoro, or was it when we got Zoro, or we met Kobe and Kobe stayed, and all the, you know, with Captain Morgan, for example, it's like everything at the beginning there didn't have anything to do with like, are they good, are they bad? It was mostly just like, there's an asshole, let's take him down, he's like a tyrant, and then we'll save the girl or save the people or whatever. As it's evolved, and we've got, you know, into things like Robin, and now with Hachi as well, it's the idea is just that, yeah, if just because you are in a bad place or have done bad things doesn't mean you're a bad person.
And I think
that's kind of the most simple version of the morality.
And I think even throughout the show, there's been this kind of thing of like, oh, we're a different kind of pirates. We're good pirates.
Yeah.
Not like the bad pirates who we've defeated countless times. And then we kind of get into this arc. And then with the 11 supernovas as well, it's like, oh, there's so-and-so. He's known for like
his cruelty against
people.
Civilians. But that's what he's known for, right?
And that's maybe
we don't
not
know
the
if that's
truth.
true.
However, I think what's interesting is then when we're in the auction house, and then and then he's just like, oh, well, you know, we're fucking terrible, but like we're not selling people.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, you know, killing someone and then like capturing them and selling them. I mean, both can be pretty bad, but you know, there's one that's worse.
Well, I think what it brings up is you got to compare things, and you think about like in the story, what does that say? It's like somebody who's a killer and is like a murderer potentially, or somebody like, say, not even kids, say someone like Arlong, or maybe not Arlong, bad pirate guy. Bad pirate guy is not as bad as slaver. And like, what does that mean? Like, somebody who kills somebody is better. Somebody who kills somebody is better than somebody who sells people into slavery, unless you're Duval and you're just funny, I guess. But Duval is like reformed, and I don't know if he's still a human trafficker or like what his deal is.
I think he changed his entire ways. You know, he became hot, and now he's forsaken all of that.
I guess so. Anyway, the idea is freedom is the most important thing, and that is obviously reflected way before all this shit with just Luffy's character in general, is that he's against being tied down in any way. He wants to go out into the world and be free. So, you know, like that it's a pretty simple message when you think of it like that. And I think that's mostly it, you know, like you with a lot of things in stories in general, and with One Piece, you can dress it up with a lot of like big words, but it's really a simple idea. It's just that freedom is like the ultimate good, and but you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always good. It can, sometimes bad people being free, bad things can happen. But I guess beyond that, it's that the idea with the Straw Hats is, that they are kind of like these different quote unquote pirates. But we're starting to learn that, similar to the conversation was it in Jai? Yeah. With, Blackbeard, before we even knew he was Blackbeard. And there's this like sort of other side of the coin set up with him and Luffy, how they kind of have the same similar seeming ideals, and Blackbeard's kind of fitting this archetype of this sort of the dark evil twin type archetype. Similar with Kid, where like you said, it's like it's revealed like he's the only one with was it a higher bounty, or was it the same bounty as Luffy? I can't remember. I think it was the only one with a higher bounty than Luffy. Yeah. But he's known as like a a exceedingly cruel and or ruthless pirate captain, and he, apparently he's really bad to civilians. We don't know if that's true, but that's the reputation. And then we learn in his conversation when the two of them in law are like going up against all the soldiers. Luffy mentions being king of the pirates in the One Piece and stuff, and then Kid, the guy who is apparently super cruel and an asshole and walks out of the slave auction, is talking to Luffy like, "Oh, everyone looked down on me like I was a psycho anytime I mentioned anything about that." So again, take a step back from just that conversation. Like, what does that say about the whole story? That like the one guy who is most like Luffy, has a higher bounty than Luffy, is also apparently super cruel and ruthless, and also believes, in the One Piece, like that when there's this pattern there and these similarities, it's making a statement towards the morality of the series and the world. So yeah, it's just the idea that you're it's very similar to Hunter x Hunter, where it's like your life is in your hands. Your life is your choice, and you get to choose how you live it, until there's like people who take it away from you. That's like the ultimate evil. But if that's the ultimate evil, then the ultimate good is freedom, But sometimes people die if you're free.
Yeah. It's rough out there.
Yeah.
Marta Bratalia asked, looking at things turned out, do you think Luffy punching a celestial dragon was a good idea? Also, did Oda portray the consequences of such an action good enough?
I mean, we don't know yet. We haven't seen the consequences. Other than with, are you talking about, I guess they're probably talking about when Kuma like smacked him away. I guess nothing happened. So they got separated. I think as far as Luffy being really torn up about it, thinking that everyone's like dying or going to splat on the ground or drown or something. Yeah.
I think that this kind of goes.
I guess so.
I have sort of a follow-up question that kind of goes with this as well. From Zoo Dinger asked, you had expected the crew to be defeated at Enies Lobby. Did them winning there make you think that Oda was not that was not a route Oda would ever take? Sort of how you expect people to die. You don't expect people to die anymore when people like Pell survived. Were you caught off guard now that it did happen? And was this defeat compared to what you expected was going to happen if the Straw Hats got defeated? I feel like those two questions kind of go together in a way that it's like, I think that punching the Celestial Dragon did have about as dire of consequences as we've seen in the story up until this point. We've never been defeated on that level before. And I think it was an example of, we keep getting into these bigger and bigger situations and just thinking that we're going to win every time. Luffy, is not afraid to go up against anyone, because everyone that he goes up against, he's able to defeat, you know, with the help of his friends, with, a good battle strategy, with just his devil fruit being the opposite of it. Like he's had a lot of luck, but kind of luck that's been it's like in Blue Lock, like you can create your own luck by putting yourselves in the right situations and being open to the right ideas. But I think that this defeat was an example of like, okay, we've told you that if you punch one of these celestial dragons, you're gonna get your ass beat. And then we're like, well, we always win, so we'll punch one of these celestial dragons because they're suck. But then we don't just win. We would have potentially died if Kuma didn't come in and save us, And the mental toll of Luffy thinking that all of his friends were dying or he's never going to see them again was bad. But that was the better option, because we needed to get saved there. If we didn't, if Kuma didn't come in and in the moment kind of destroy Luffy mentally, we would have died. Eventually, you know?
The tension was real because of the confidence that we had from before. So I think it was intentional, and it wasn't just wanting everything to be big and cool. But at the time, it really did feel like Enies Lobby was talked about like it's this on its own incredible fight arc, and it has its moments, but it's like when you think about what's actually happening, it's like we're just running through every problem that we have, and it's like it's not a problem. There's struggle, but it's, you know, we came out pretty much intact. Zoro lost a sword, and we moved, and we even went back to society right next door and moved on.
Yeah.
So it's like, so on its own, it feels like not much. But again, that's where the real storytelling prowess comes in, because that feeling of it feeling like we could conquer the world is exactly what led to our downfall, like you said, in much fewer words.
Yeah, I think there's also kind of the, like, you know, they're getting away basically just with nothing. But then later on we do find out that, you know, all this stuff with Whitebeard, with Shanks, like they're meeting, there's all the stuff with Ace, you know, it makes sense that like now the Straw Hats are not the top priority. So I do kind of like that, you know, like we were getting away with stuff, not because, you know, we would have gotten away with it if they had nothing else going on, but also kind of because they have other things going on. Like, you know, if they sent, if Kuma was 100% on their side and they sent him after us, if they were like, hey, these guys just wrecked our place, go and get them. And if he actually wanted to get us, he could have came and gotten us. Or Kizaru could have just come in and just absolutely clapped us instantly. But so we kind of, in a way, in hindsight, after seeing how strong some of these people really are, kind of just got away with it just because they were too busy doing other things, you know, honestly.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I think that it all works out in the end. And that's a good lesson to take with you throughout all of One Piece, because that's been true most of the time. It's like, not it all works out in the end, not like, oh, the characters will get out fine, but like this feels weird, this feels like it doesn't make sense, and it feels non-intentional, like it like in the way that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like it doesn't make sense to set up for it making sense later. It feels like it was just kind of cobbled together, and it's just kind of nonsense. But no, it actually ends up, you know, working narratively together, whether or not it was cobbled together or not, you know.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that that's like one of the best things about his writing ability.
Yeah, exactly.
Is to be able to, you know, pre-plan things and then also just make things work that maybe weren't pre-planned.
Yeah.
This is kind of an interesting thing that I liked. Chocoboshi said and asked, we have seen it a few times where something we know the name of is referred to by a different term. In this case, the Grand Line is called the Center Sea by the women on Amazon Lily. Do you like the inclusion of that? In a world so vast, separated by barriers that are basically impassable for regular people, certain things go by different names depending on the region the people referring to them are from. I feel like I like that getting pointed out, because I noticed that at the time when they said that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I like it, and I think that it makes sense, you know, especially if you live in the Calm Belt, and you know, especially the Grand Line, like I feel like it's such a thing. It's like, it's so grand, it's so different, it's so crazy, you know, but also you know, there's like the East Blue, like there's nothing crazy about that. There's the Grand Line, and there's the New World, and they sound so crazy, but it's just like, oh yeah, they're in the Center Sea because we're badass and we live in the Calm Belt. Yeah. And we like fucking take these poisonous serpents and drive them around like into the Grand Line like it's no problem, and we just steal shit and bring them. You know what I mean? Like it's I like it, and I do appreciate inclusions of stuff like that, because I think that is like a way to world build in a subtle way. I think that I think that's not obviously in this, but in some things you can overdo it, where it's like, you know, oh, you go somewhere and they have a different name for like everything, and it's clear that you're just really trying really, really hard to make, you know, this place seem different than what we know. But I think just like subtle little things like that do a lot, you know, in a way that it doesn't stick out to you like, oh my God, they're calling this, that, you know what I mean? But just, you know, very subtly, especially in a world where everyone speaks the same language as well, you know?
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about that because the question kind of said it all.
Yeah,
So,
but
yeah.
I just wanted to read it because I thought that it was cool, and
What I do have to say about all that is, did you know we're moving from left to right, from west to east on the map? Because every time it's been framed in diagrams, and when we came off of Reverse Mountain, we were viewing it where Reverse Mountain was on the right side of the screen almost always. And you'd figure, just based on like, I guess the fact that you read manga right to left, so then the main character are usually moving right to left, you know?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, like these like the vocabulary of the medium and the vocabulary of cinematography and stuff like that, and framing and shit, that, you know, if we're seeing the Reverse Mountain on this side, and when we're looking at Amazon Lily is on the top of the fucking, in the comm belt, right?
Yeah.
And then the red line's like over there. And so, but apparently, and there's been a couple comments, I don't know if this is a spoiler, and I'm accidentally spoiling you, by the way. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but we're actually, like, Amazon Lily is actually on the south comm belt, I think. I tried to look up maps, but I didn't want to spoil myself, so I didn't look at it too long. I didn't see anything or spoil myself at all. I just like looked at the overall thing because I started to get confused. I forget why. I was like thinking is because we had that discussion where we were thinking about
you were getting really bamboozled.
I just don't understand like where Water 7 and Ennie's Lobby are in relation, because now there's
and
like this
giant
triangle
whirlpool that looked like it was taken up like,
and then it's a triangle.
thing.
So I was like, wait, am I insane, or is the not the Bermuda Triangle, but the fucking whatever it was where Thriller Bark was.
Yeah.
Is that in there somehow? And it's like, or something. And I'm like, so there's two secret triangles. And so I'm like, I need to see. And I promise I didn't see any island names or anything. I didn't spoil myself. I just looked at like that part. And then I'm like, wait, Amazon Lily's down there. I thought it was up next to that. Like, and I'm like, I got so fucking confused. Because it's been a thing that we've been talking about, and I saw a couple comments back in the day who were saying, like, no, so somebody needs to get Carson a map, because we keep running into these things where Carson's, like, forgetting where we are or where we're going or something, because it always felt like, I don't know, it just confused the shit out of me. So while we're talking about, like, the center C and stuff like that, I didn't know that we were actually moving, that when we went in from Logetown southwest into Reverse Mountain, we didn't get spat out on the left side of the red line. We got spat out on the right side of the the red line into the Grand Line. And we've been moving that direction. But it's so fucking confusing because every time we see a diagram or a map of an island area,
I mean, maybe that is just like,
we're like usually arriving on the left side of islands, right? No. Yeah.
I feel like
I don't know. I feel like it might be like a weird, crazy lore thing that we just spoiled ourselves. I don't know. I hope that people don't like spoil us based on this or something. But anyway, I thought that it was real. It's been fucking me up for a long time because I always felt like there was this weird disconnect between me and like what's going on. And then I saw that and I'm like, I still don't know because I don't want to look into it too deeply because I don't want to end up spoiling myself on accident. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about that.
Neither do I.
Okay. We have a question by Baranzan. What are your thoughts on Kizaru and how do you feel he compares to Aokiji?
Kizaru. What do you think about Kizaru?
I think Kizaru is creepy. I don't really like him. But I do think that he's intimidating. I do think he does feel, admiral level, And I do kind of like that, at least thus far, he's being presented as, like, he has a job and he's doing that job. And there's no little, like, oh, he's actually a good guy. Or he's actually, like, like similar to Aoki, like,
yeah, I'm glad it's not the same guy.
There's Garp, who we know, has some issues with the Marines. There's Aokiji, who clearly has issues with the Marines.
Or Smoker.
There's Smoker, who has issues with the Marines. There's Kuma, who has issues with everyone's got issues.
It's like somehow every huge roadblock that we come up against is other than Rob Lucci, for example. It's like everyone we come up against is secretly a double agent or something. You know?
Or
like
even
every
that,
really not every guy we come up against, but like all these really powerful, enigmatic, like one man army dudes are actually just Sigmas who don't give a shit about the world government.
And I do kind of like that in the way that we've talked for a long time about how the Marines are basically just pirates. You know?
Right.
And any high-ranking Marines are basically just pirates. They have their ship decked out with their like theme.
Yeah.
You know, like they're.
So then it's like, what's the difference between a pirate and a Marine? There's really no difference. They're just a bigger fish type thing.
Yeah, they just
the
have
world
a boss
works the same way. Yeah,
mostly do what they're told, kind of thing. But I do like, and I kind of hope that he stays that way. Like I don't want. The thing is, like, so you don't just want just like super lame, one-dimensional, flat villains, but not everyone is that complex. You know, like you can have someone who maybe he really likes the Marines and maybe he likes the world government, or maybe he just likes, you know, having free license to beat people up. You know what I mean? Like, because also all the warlords, as well as we've seen, are very not, they're also similar to a lot of the admirals, vice admirals, people that we've seen are also like not really, you know, they just say that they're allegiant to the world government, basically. So I kind of like getting introduced to a guy, because the last big guy that we got introduced to was Kuma, and he was introduced as being super loyal to the world government, and then like very quickly we find out that he's not.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of we get introduced to an admiral and he's like actually what you would anticipate from one of the, you know, the three like big craziest Marines.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that he's, you know, very not similar to Aokiji. They're all really fucking tall. It feels like everyone, it's like new guy's really strong. Well, how can we illustrate how strong he is? Let's make him really fucking tall. Let's make him 15 feet tall. It's like, it feels like that's just a theme, and the further we get into the story, it's everyone just keeps getting fucking taller. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. It's like, are they human or are they giant, or, you know, what's going on there? But again, they're not giants is the thing.
Yeah, because there are giants.
Yeah.
As well.
It's just funny. But yeah, I most of all, I like that they're not the same. It makes me wonder what Akainu is going to be like. How are they going to be very, because, you know, Aokiji's a sleepy guy. He's got like an eye mask on his head at all times. He's got ice powers. He's really cool, chill. He rides his bike. He saves people. And Kizaru is just like, doesn't seem to give a fuck and doesn't really care about anything. Maybe he does, but he's also very flamboyant and Yakuza-ish. And then what can Akainu be? Can he be like very
maybe
angry?
Really angry or really passionate? Just like really cares about really cares about doing things right, or like I feel like someone with a little bit more less of a laid back kind of attitude.
Well, yeah, because Kizaru is yellow monkey, and then Aokiji is like a blue chicken, and then Akainu is red dog.
Which
so
you would imagine to be someone
maybe barks
a bit more
a lot,
rabid.
maybe really loud. Yeah. So far their personalities match, because like I think a chicken is usually maybe I'm getting my shit mixed up, but I think a chicken in like Chinese symbology is, or in Japanese is like grace. It's like it's
kind of cool, like a
it's like something like that.
Like not how we would associate a chicken of just being like a shitty little
bird,
a
little dinosaur. Yeah, I forget what other synonyms, but I think I learned this from like Samurai Champloo. But anyway, whatever.
Interesting. We do have another question from Bootyman555, who asked,
"Is Kiji chicken?" Sorry.
How have your opinions on / about Roger changed since the scene with Rayleigh in Shaki's bar? And what were you expecting from his character going forward?
Pheasant.
Oh, pheasant.
So basically chicken. So the funny thing about the Roger shit and the Rayleigh stuff is that I wonder if all that stuff was a huge surprise. Did we learned that he was sick, but the fact that Roger turned himself in, I feel like you don't have to be a genius to guess it, but I feel like it's one of those things that not everyone thinks about.
Yeah.
But like, and Crocus joining the pirate and being Roger's ship doctor and being connected to all this, like that reveal. What other reveals were there? Obviously, other than Rayleigh being his first mate or his second in command, because Rayleigh was just cool, and we learned that, and that we didn't know about him. What other reveals were there? I mean, the idea of the voice of the universe, or as people corrected in the comments, the voice of all things.
The Poneglyph audiobook over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's like, I think maybe if you hadn't been theorizing the entire time that Roger turned himself in, it would have been way more of a crazy reveal. I do still like the confirmation of it.
Yeah,
I like it a lot, and I like that he was sick as well, because it was always kind of like, oh, he turned himself in. Like, was he just kind of being a shithead and like trying to make a harder time for the Marines? Because that was kind of our thing. Is just like, did he just tell everyone to go out and look for the One Piece, just for them, just to mess with people and like inspire more people to be like him? But it makes more sense if he's sick, and that was kind of his like final thing, and he was gonna die anyway. And it's way better to die as like a martyr for piratedom than just sick in bed somewhere.
Yeah.
But
like we didn't. I don't think we, the two of us, like learned a lot. We like there was things that confirmed, but like the whole scene was vibe. The vibes were really high, but it doesn't really change much about like, because what we already thought all that stuff about Roger.
Yeah.
So as far as like how does this scene change the way you look at the world, it doesn't really change basically anything.
It does. I am interested though a little bit more in like the voice of the world, or the whatever was kind of driving him to, especially since he couldn't read poneglyphs, and like it's like what kind of inspired him to do that, because we didn't know anything about poneglyphs till Robin came along and she like really knew about them.
Yeah. I still think Robin's mom was on that fucking crew.
Same.
I still think Robin's mom was on that crew.
I still think that Robin could be Roger's kid.
I still think that too. I agree.
It's a very real possibility.
There's still a possibility that Luffy is Roger's kid. But yeah, it doesn't really change very much about what we think about the world. Roger being sick is interesting. What it might change is because the idea that he turned himself in obviously wasn't foreign to us. We guess that, like, I guess that in the first episode of the live action, when we first saw his execution, I'm like, he's way too happy about this. I thought that he might still be alive. Maybe I thought he had a Brook devil fruit type thing was my theory. But Brook has that, and I think maybe even Fivehead, the fact that we have a crew member who has that fruit and there can only be one type proves that Roger doesn't have that fruit, but that doesn't mean that there's no way that he's still alive. Yeah, so I think that it's possible that he's still alive. He could have faked his illness. He told Rayleigh, I'm not going to die, but people pointed out that like that's Here Luke said that like people who you never
your memory keeps you alive.
I forget what the words were specifically, but like pirates never die or what it was a
Goonies never say die.
Yes, Spartans never die. They're just missing in action, or the One Piece version of that, whatever that was. That I think it was more harkening back to that type of thing. And I forget, maybe there was a connection with Hero Luke and Roger. I think there was one there as well, or it felt like it, because he went like with the Cherry Blossom Island, or because he was a pirate at one point, but I forget if I theorized he was on Roger's crew or some kind of connection there. I forget. There's some theory that I had about Hero Luke being somehow connected to Roger, having met him or something. I forget. Regardless, I think Roger saying that to Rayleigh is more with having to do with that than literally I won't die. But it would be crazy if he not only turned himself in, but he also didn't die and he was just telling the truth. And Rayleigh thinks it's this crazy metaphorical thing, or we think that we're making these metaphorical connections, but really he was just like, I'm not actually gonna die. I'm not actually even sick. I'm faking my death so that I can, be one with the voice of the fucking universe. Whatever that means, whether it's actually God or I'm very cynical, as people know. I still am not 100% convinced that the One Piece is like, ooh, the Hope Diamond One Piece, the one piece of treasure that's more
Dragon
valuable.
Ball.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this gem, now I can pay off all of my bounties because it's money, like money that's not freedom. That's not like in the language of the series. So like the treasure has to be something more than that, or it can just be symbolic, which is just as meaningful, because Luffy, just as like he didn't want to learn the truth of the fucking One Piece, he didn't want to, because he wants to figure it out himself. He wants to go and live the life and go and explore the world and do all the good shit. So, again, in the sort of language of the series where Roger is like the king of the pirates. What does it mean to be king of the pirates? He's like the most free guy. He like goes around. He's a master of his own destiny type thing. He's an inspiration like that. Well, in that context, the idea of the One Piece could just be nothing. It could just be the experience of going and living an adventure with your friends and exploring the world and eating great food and meeting people and struggling and surpassing your expectations and surpassing your limits and helping people and forming bonds and all that type of stuff. That's a greater treasure than like, ooh, the Hope Diamond or whatever it is, So in that kind of context, in that sort of theory where the One Piece is literally just an idea or the friends you made along the way type of thing, we get to the end and then it's like, oh, there's nothing in this box. Luffy, what the fuck? I'm sorry that we wasted all of, this time and people died on the way here potentially to get the One Piece and it doesn't actually exist. And then Luffy's like, whatever. We just lived a great life and did all this stuff. That's a way better thing than whatever material item, whatever scepter of magic power that we could have found in this box. So it's going to have, and even if it is something, it'll probably have that kind of symbolic meaning to it or something adjacent to that is my theory. All that to say, in that context of thinking of it that way, I think that it's possible that the whole voice of all things or the voice of the universe, what is it? I think it in that, again, in this framework, it might just be a literal call to adventure, because that's kind of what it is. It's like he got called.
He just feels like he
to
needs to go on this adventure.
Yeah, which is a basic hero's journey thing, the call to adventure. And maybe it's like manifested what that is. Maybe he didn't actually hear a voice. He's just similar like Conqueror's Haki, this sort of amorphous spiritual thing that you have in you. That's the heart, the spirit of the conqueror. It's just, he just is one of those people who he's hearing the voice of all things, or he's hearing this call to adventure in a way that like somebody without that kind of spirit wouldn't be able to. So again, similar to how the One Piece might be nothing or might be something symbolic, that might be something symbolic as well. And it might have more to do with Roger's character and his desire for freedom than it does for a literal guy up there whispering in his ear, maybe like that's the other extreme. Yeah. Maybe it's something in between.
You know what would be actually insane?
What?
Okay. What if Roger was still alive and it's the one piece left of his card, and it's like you pick it up and it's just a piece of paper and it just kind of like
his card, like his Viva card?
Yeah.
The one piece of Viva card left, and then when you find it, he dies?
No, I'm saying like it would be crazy if he wasn't dead. If I think that he's dead, but if he wasn't dead, and it's the one piece left of his Viva card, that then you know what I mean.
But if you die, it goes away. Are you saying in the theory that he's not dead?
I said three times in the theory that he wasn't dead. If that's what the one piece was, it was the one piece of his thing. That'd be kind of crazy.
Cool. Anyway, I don't just to sum that up, because I get a lot of shit when I say that, I don't think that the One Piece is a real thing. I think that, I still think it's more likely.
Yeah, or I still like it better, at least in my mind.
Yeah, because I think about it the other way and like, oh, we're rich now. It's like, great. So what? Like, when has money been the answer? I mean, the slave auction thing, that's one thing, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway.
Yeah.
All that stuff wouldn't have mattered anyway, because it's the problem is greater than that. Just like how the meaning behind the One Piece is greater than whatever physical thing it might actually be. So I think, and I think that especially in the way that Roger's talking to Rayleigh and like sacrificing himself and like starting the era of the pirates, or the Great Pirate Era. Roger doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who is like highly valuing some piece of treasure.
Yeah.
So I think that he's the type of dude like Luffy who would value a greater transcendent, beyond physicality, a spiritual treasure.
Or even just a treasure that is like maybe more like meaningless, like the one piece left of something from that ancient civilization, or like and it just looks like a rock, but it's like
in Naruto. Like in the stone village of Naruto, where the Tsuchikage is
here's a special rock.
Yeah, I'm polishing the sacred stone. Throws it into a pool full of these rocks and then pulls another one, puts it there. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Luther asked, "What are your thoughts on Haki so far?"
We talked about it a lot in the discussions. I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah,
I want to learn more about it. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I like it. I like having sort of this alternate power system that allows us to, expand like wider rather than just explosively stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that there's a counter to Devil Fruits, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll make for a lot of really hype moments.
Mm-hmm.
As it already has in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mo asked, thoughts on Kuma? And if he was helping the Straw Hats, why do you think he did it? And if he wasn't, what other motive might he have had?
We've talked about this a lot as well. I wonder if people just like skip all the discussions. But Kuma, the idea is that Kuma was helping the Straw Hats because he is connected to Dragon in some way, because that's what he said, that he was, or he mentioned Dragon in some way, and that maybe Vegapunk is perhaps connected to Dragon in some way, or maybe just with the world government he gained sentience or some sort of control over himself, or got his own ideas, and now he got in contact with Dragon, and he's actually a revolutionist as well. Dragon, obviously, revolutionist Dragon, the most notorious criminal that's not a pirate, who is trying to overtake and destroy the world government. Yeah, I think I don't see any other reason for doing what he did or being the way that he is at all. Is there another possible reason? I think that he wouldn't just, he's, maybe we're wrong. Let's say we're wrong about this theory. So the other possibility is just that he's malfunctioning, or
he's been hijacked. If he is
maybe.
more robot than person, if he, say, Dragon caught him and put some, like, he is a cyborg, so he's still a person, but he also, there's a lot of robot in him, so that could be a potential possibility. But I really think specifically with the way that he sent Luffy to the exact place that he needed to go in order to be able to have a chance at going to save Ace, and like just the locations that he sent people, I feel like it's very clearly that he knew what he was gonna do. He didn't just I'm just gonna fling you over here.
I mean, if it was really random, some of them would be dead anyway.
Yeah, they
so
would
like he had to he has to hit them in such a way where he plunk and then they bounce perfectly through endless fucking ocean to land, first of all, which there's less land than ocean. So he has to be aiming. So he has to make a choice. Whether he's choosing I'm facing this way, I guess I'll just blam, Sanji's on this island, or whatever. But maybe he just chose Luffy and everyone else is but some of them are super far. Isn't Robin in the East Blue?
Yeah, and how Frankie was at Vegapunk's.
Yeah, anyway. I think that there's no other way to really look at what he did other than he's working with Dragon, or at the very least against the world government. Maybe parallel to Dragon. Maybe they're not friends necessarily, but
maybe they're
not
doing
enemies.
things. Maybe it's kind of like they're doing things in their own way. Like he's trying to change things by working with the world government, and Dragon's like, no, I'm gonna.
I don't think so.
No.
Maybe I don't think so. He's working too much against them. Like he got a direct order to kill all the Straw Hats and everyone on Thriller Bark, and he just straight up didn't do it. Instead, he made a bargain about about Zoro's like commitment to the bit, and honored it, and just left, and then showed up again, and then sent them all to like I as far as the question, I don't know what other interpretation you could have with him, but that doesn't mean that that's the only one. It just means it's the only one that I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's at this point it seems pretty clear to me that he's a double agent with the world government.
Mm-hmm. And we have Martin Hagen asked, for Amazon Lily specifically, it's the first arc where we get Luffy alone without his crew. How do you feel the show handled the absence of the rest of the crew? I think I liked it. I think that we got to see him kind of chilling. I liked all the, his kind of antics that he was getting up to. I liked that he, had some moments of being like really worried, and then throughout his time there just got more motivated to go and find everyone, and then made the decision that he wasn't going to get them. He was going to go get Ace. Because he trusted that his crew was going to be, fine without him, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked the way I liked the way they handled it. I thought that Amazon Lily was great with just being able to spend quality time with Luffy, and Luffy having to think about things himself. I really liked him having to talk with Granny about Ace, and try to figure out what the fuck he's gonna do. That was a good moment where he's like, he just seems so. Normally he has Nami to chime in.
Yeah, people are like, what are you talking about? Let's go.
Or they're he can kind of throw it back and forth with different people on the crew. Mm-hmm. But in this moment, he's has to try and think about what he's gonna do, and he has to make a decision of whether to get his crew or not. No, he just has to go straight there. There's not time to get his crew.
Yeah.
So I that part to me was very much a highlight, him having to reckon with that and really make learn the truth of what's happening with Ace. Have to really think about that, and it's gonna be interesting to see where that goes for sure.
I agree. Stalling asked, thoughts on Boa's introduction and character. Additionally, how do you think Oda has handled female characters up to this point?
What do you think?
I liked Boa's introduction. I liked her just kicking that cat for no reason. It's kind of silly, but I liked it because I feel like it kind of just puts her in with some what you would think of it a classic One Piece bad guy making an entrance, Yeah. And I feel like I liked her a lot, and then I feel like I liked her more. You know what I mean? I like the whole turn people to stone idea. If they like her, I love the stipulation on her ability of they have to be kind of enamored by her to be able for it to work. Yeah. That's such a highlight for me, because that's the conditional devil fruits haven't really been much of a thing. Yeah. And I really like that. I love having this super overpowered, you can turn people to stone instantly, but they have to be in love with you first. And if they aren't, or even if they're able to distract themselves, like the captain on that ship, who would have fallen victim to it if he didn't stab himself through the hand and the pain was enough to snap him out of it. I feel like I really like that. I think that she was intimidating. I liked her. I like that she had this backstory as well, and the scene of her telling that I feel like was very impactful. And her sisters that kind of just seemed like, they're these snake people and stuff like that. But then it kind of comes around, the ones freaking out in the corner, and it's just very, very just that mention traumatic, I think it was I like her. Now that she's just in love with Luffy, it's kind of silly, but
I like it because it's not the same. Again, she looks a lot like Robin. You say she looks like both. To me, it's just she just looks like Robin with a different haircut. But like I like that if for no other reason, I like that she's super in love with Luffy so that she's not again just like hot woman like Robin who's like really cool, you know?
Yeah, it give her the chance to be a little bit
she just
girlish and
or
silly.
just different. She doesn't behave the same way as like, she's not going to behave the same way as Nami or Robin, for example. And I like that. Or Kami.
Yeah.
Like or Vivi or whatever. It's like there's a lot of overlap between some of the female characters, not all of them. But I like that if they're going to introduce someone like this that has possible similarities, that even if the whole falling in love thing is it can be, maybe you think it's a bit silly. I think it's kind of silly. I don't mind it that much. But like, I just like it because she is behaving differently with Luffy and we get to see a different back and forth and a different set of jokes. It's not the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
So I like the variety. Yeah, I like her devil fruit as well, same as you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, as for the second half of that question, I feel like I think like Oda's representation of women is actually quite superior to,
definitely superior to Kishimoto
yeah.
so far. But it is like, so you made an island full of women and the most powerful woman falls in love with the dude. So now she's like obeying him just because she loves him, and not because he's not lovable, not because he wouldn't be the type of dude that she might be attracted to. It makes sense. It's not like it comes out of nowhere. But it's like if it was an island of all men, maybe it might not have the whole culture and everything. Like it's all based around sort of superficial woman quality stereotypes. So if you want to be really critical about it, it is like kind of weird that like it's why are they so upset? Like you see what I'm saying? They're like why is that the thing that happens with an island full of women? I guess they're deprived of male attention, obviously, and they don't I don't know. It's like, would this have happened on a different island or whatever? Like it's happening here because it's all women. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes sense. Again, it's like it makes sense with the characters. It's not coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's not like it's problematic representation of women. It just is like it's
a little bit kind of cliche almost.
It's kind of like on the nose with you make an island full of women and then it ends with them falling in love with the main character and then basically just doing whatever he says.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. But it's not bad because, again, Luffy, I think what makes it better for me is that Luffy, and what makes it not like harem-ish, like a harem male fantasy whatever, is that Luffy isn't like a super sexual guy. And Luffy is a very admirable captain, leader, strong in his convictions. Like he has a very attractive personality if you break it down, and he's funny, and he's not trying to be cool. Like he has a lot of qualities that like women usually like in men. So it's not like it's not like it's super convenient or whatever. It's like whatever. But yeah, so I think it's great. I think I don't think that there's a real problem with the representation of women in the show. And again, one thing, and apparently I saw a comment about this. I don't know if this is a thing. Apparently he can sometimes get flack for drawing the like same woman with all the female characters. So then he heard that, and then Amazon Lily was like his response to that, where I don't know if this is true either, if this is like said in an interview or something, but apparently he like drew women all very varied to show that he doesn't just draw women the same way, and it's an example of how he can draw women differently. But aside from that sort of meta aspect, that was appreciated too, where it's not just these Amazonian goddess warrior women are just super hot snoo type figures. There is some of that, but they come in all shapes and sizes. Which I think is good.
That's what I was thinking too. Like it would be, especially when you're being inspired by like the Amazon women. Like I feel like when you think of that, you're like all these like super like buff and but still hot women. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's like the picturing thing, like, oh, this island of women. So I do appreciate that. Yeah, he took the time to draw them like how he draws men, where they're all just like random shapes and sizes, and some of them are like absolutely giant for no reason, and some of them are, have different proportions, because we see that all the time in, like different pirate groups, and sometimes the Marines. So yeah, I agree. I like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was actually the last question.
Oh, that was the last question?
Yeah.
I feel like we're missing something. Maybe not?
No, I mean, I guess maybe it feels like we're missing something because we're still technically
in the middle of
the
saga. Yeah, true.
We're, and this isn't even the end of we're still going with Boa to the next place. Like it's not even really like that much of a wrap up of this arc. Like it feels like it's still continuing. But I'm glad that we did this because we yapped for an hour and 30 minutes.
About like the first
half the first half of this thing. And I feel like there's also a lot of things that we've talked about that might have seemed less relevant by the time we get to the end.
Exactly.
If we are going to Ace's execution, where there's going to be a mashup of Whitebeard, potentially Shanks, all the warlords, all the admirals, fucking Luffy, everyone else might show up. Rayleigh might show up. We don't know what's going to happen, but it has the potential to be absolutely insane. Yeah. So I do appreciate the kind of the heads up that we should do preemptive podcasts, because I think like some of this stuff, like the 11 supernovas, unless they get like re-involved with this, I feel like would feel so insignificant, and like some of the things that were happening, I feel like would just feel like, oh, why would we even talk about that when we can talk about this other like potentially crazy thing that's about to happen?
Yeah.
So I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I think it was good as well. I think the worry is always that like, oh, why are we being asked to do a podcast right now? But it's like, I think it's pretty fucking clear why.
Yeah.
It's because these next episodes are going to be insane. It's not like, oh, we got spoiled by everyone by asking us to do a podcast right before everything goes crazy, which means like, some things must go really crazy.
It's not like in Thriller Bark, quickly, right before the nothing happened episode was, can you just do a podcast like real quick right now? And we're just like, there's like 10 episodes left in this arc. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, it's like, right before everything goes fucking crazy and changes completely and like goes off the rails, can you just do like, what are you thinking right now about what the story is like? Just can you collect your thoughts for me real quick? It's like, I don't know why you're asking me, but I guess it's pretty good. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I'm liking it. These characters seem cool. I hope that they're friends forever. It's like, oh, do you? Is that what you think? Like, it seems a lot like some shit is gonna go down, and we didn't need to be told that. Or
they made it very clear in the story that like there's a lot of things that have been ramping up.
We are going to UFC 1000 right now, or whatever the fuck. Like the craziest fight of it. We're going to Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson right now. It's the biggest fight event of the century, and it's going to be insane. And everyone knows it. And so like, it's not a spoiler that something crazy is going to happen, or that this part is going to be insane. Mm-hmm. So I think it was probably worth it to do this.
I agree. Please leave a like. Please subscribe. Please check out our Patreon if you want to get ahead.
Yep, 2 weeks ahead.
2 weeks ahead of Uncuts. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.